everything that I do and think about in terms of business development and helping clients and the work and these types of, events, all of that I think of in terms of building community. And so I equate it to, if I'm working with a small business, not only do I want to get that small business in the right direction from an entity formation perspective, from a trademark perspective, from a managerial perspective, but the reason I want to do that and the conversations I have with that client are around how they can build successfully for the future so that they can contribute back to the community in which we exist.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Traversing Entrepreneurship podcast, a show for business owners who set out to do something different and did not stop there. This is Derek Dall'Olmo, coming to you from Traverse City, Michigan, the city that inspired the name of the show. With over 17 years of experience in the financial industry, I've heard my fair share of success as well as horror stories in business. On this podcast, I enjoy sitting down with a variety of entrepreneurs to talk about what it takes to build a successful business, including all of the ups and downs that come along with doing something different and paving your own way in life. In today's episode, I'll be interviewing Josh Traeger. Josh is the founding attorney of True North Legal Group PLLC, a community-centered law practice based here in Traverse City. He is also a husband, father, entrepreneur, outdoor enthusiast, and military veteran. Josh served for 10 years on active duty in the United States Air Force before moving here to Traverse City. And his daily work includes managing a growing legal practice, coaching high performers who are confronting personal and professional crises, and volunteering in our community. Join us today as we walk through Josh's path from military defense attorney to entrepreneur and learn what led Josh to start True North Legal Group and how this firm is filling a need here in Traverse City. Welcome to the show, Josh, and thanks for being here.
Oh, it's really a pleasure to be here, Derek. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, Josh, can you give our listeners a kind of a background of, how you got to True North Legal Group? What was life like beforehand? What were you doing? How did you end up founding your own law firm?
Yeah, sure. So I'll try to do that as succinctly as I can.
Well, I know you're an attorney, so you don't have that in your body.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So I grew up in Western Pennsylvania. I went to undergrad down in North Carolina at Wake Forest University. And then after Wake Forest, I went to law school in Chicago, which is where I met my now wife, who is from Michigan originally. So I didn't grow up in Michigan, but she did. When we were in law school, when I was in law school and she was working in Chicago, I grew interested in the Air Force JAG Corps, which is basically the Air Force's version of its own law firm. It employs about 1,000 attorneys to help with day-to-day military operations and military needs. And so became really interested in that. I happened to be a trial advocacy fellow at law school, which is just had a lot of training in doing trial work, and was accepted ultimately into the Air Force. Served for 10 years on active duty in the Air Force between Valdosta, Georgia, Phoenix, Arizona, Colorado Springs, Colorado, and Washington, D.C. Loved it. The vast majority of that time I spent as a senior prosecutor, so I was traveling all around the world prosecuting cases. Really high speed, high energy work.
All military cases.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so all military courts martial that I was handling. So if a military member committed a crime, my organization generally learned about it. We would often have jurisdiction over that offense. And if it was the type of offense that we handled at a higher level, we would take kind of lead on the prosecuting of those cases. So I was based in Colorado, would go all around the world. And then I was moved to D.C., to kind of our headquarters in D.C., and did the same thing from Washington, D.C.
So for those of us that aren't, legally inclined, we reference things in movies.
Sure.
So, when I think of, legal movies, it's like A Few Good Men, right? The military legal movies. You were not Tom Cruise in this scenario. You were Tom Cruise's adversary. You were the prosecutor.
That's right.
I guess was Tom Cruise the prosecutor?
Kevin Bacon.
Bacon.
So I was the Kevin Bacon of A Few Good Men.
Okay.
Tom Cruise, like you said, was the defense attorney in that position. I did Tom Cruise's job for a while when I was stationed out in Phoenix, Arizona. But for the most part, I was prosecuting cases. For about 8.5 years of my 10 years, I was a prosecutor.
Okay. So does the JAG Corps, is it the same legal standards as, I'm going to say, normie court?
Yeah.
Is it all beyond reasonable doubt or what? Is it all those same requirements or is it different?
Absolutely. So it's all the same things that you would think of in your local jurisdiction. Probably the biggest, so beyond a reasonable doubt, That's standard. There's the same kind of roles and responsibilities that you would think of in regular court. There's juries, there's judges, there's court reporters and witnesses. You know, all of that is the same. Probably the biggest difference is we don't have in the military what's called a hung jury. So you might have heard that before, where
You're always going to get a verdict.
you're going to get a result in any case. And so actually what they do in the military now, they used to do it where it was instead of a unanimous decision, it was a 2/3 decision. Now it's 3/4. So 3/4 of a jury has to vote to convict a member in the military. The benefit for the members, they get a result one way or the other. There's no hung jury, so they're not going to trial over and over again. But the number of votes necessary to convict is not 12, it's 3/4. And we generally have 8-person panels instead of 12 jury members.
So I assume even with a 3/4 majority, there's still times that you're unable, maybe you got half the people, but you don't have the extra 1 or 2 people. What happens in that scenario?
The members have to vote in any case, so they cannot come to a we can't decide hung jury decision. So if they are done with their deliberative process and they say let's vote on whether he's guilty or not guilty, and they only have half, then that's the result, not guilty. Even if half of them
There's one vote.
correct.
Multiple times going back and forth and trying to reach a unanimous or whatever decision.
That's exactly right. So you might think of 12 Angry Men, the movie, if we're talking movies, right? About this idea that you could sometimes get votes and votes and votes.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how it works in the military. They vote one time, they reach a conclusion, that conclusion is announced, and the trial is over.
Yeah, because I've sat on jury duty once
Sure.
in my life, right? And we voted multiple times, after we had an initial deliberation. So first thing we did, we walked in, we took a vote,
Yep. Yeah, so to kind of get a flavor for where everybody was.
where everybody was.
Yeah.
And, this happened to be like a CSC 3 case.
Sure.
And there were 3 or 4 charges being levied against the defendant. And it's like, okay, so on each one, we just, all right, let's take a straw poll to begin with. Boom, boom, boom. Where does everybody stand on this one? Okay, that one was unanimous. Where does everybody stand on this one? That one is unanimous. Where does everybody stand on this one? Not unanimous. Where does everybody stand on this one? Not unanimous.
Right. So those are the ones we got to talk about.
Yeah, so the first 2, no problem. Second 2, all right, let's have some back and forth, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So it was an interesting process. Like something that I want to repeat, mainly because this, CSC cases are not. So that's criminal sexual conduct. Basically dealing with a minor.
Yep.
And, of age. So this case was of age male, minor woman.
Yep.
Brutal.
Well, and to be fair with you, I wasn't going to go there, but that was what I was prosecuting for at least the last, I'd say, 3 years of my Air Force career. I was almost primarily assigned to child cases involving child victims. And so not only is that high stress, it's a lot of responsibility.
Too.
Exactly. And so it took a toll. I mean, it was very difficult for me. And so although I loved the job, 2 things really motivated me. Number one, I was on the road between 200 and 250 days a year. That's a lot. It's a lot. And with a young family, I'm very grateful and yet I think every day surprised that I'm still married.
Yeah.
Because it was a stressful time.
See you, honey.
Exactly.
I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Exactly. And then I had a son at the time. He was young at the time still. He's still young. He's going to be 9 next week. But he was extremely young at that point in time when I was doing all this work. And I just didn't get to see him grow up. I mean, I had cases where I would come back, Derek, from 10 days on the road. And I'd be in the airport having landed and coming home. And I would get a call like, oh, no, you're not going home. You got to go to the next.
Ugh.
It was brutal. Yeah. But I loved it. because it was high speed and I got a ton of trial experience. I got to deal with, really interesting cases and help people, which was kind of at the core of what I love to do. And so I loved it at the same time that it was
So if you
very
think
difficult.
back to your, prosecutorial career.
Yeah.
And, if it's something you can't say, no problem.
Yeah.
Is there one type of case that always either sticks out in your head as that was my favorite case, or one case in your head that always sticks out and haunts you? And then have to give details about it.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, yeah, it was this type of case, and here's why.
Yeah. So the ones that stick with me are the ones with the youngest kids, to be honest with you. It really, I don't know. I know it's kind of something that's hard to hear, but it's also, what's the best way to put this? Kids don't necessarily assign a value to what happened to them. So a child could go through something that we would all call bad or traumatic. And although it is trauma, they might not necessarily see it as bad or traumatic. So the ones that stick with me are the kids that, I've had very young kids have to testify, and those circumstances were very hard. But for the most part, those kids came out of those cases the same kids as they were as they went in. Sure. And as long as their parents and the professionals around them know how to treat them moving forward, those circumstances kids can generally rebound from those
pretty quickly,
very quickly, very resilient.
I mean, it's always, I always joke with my wife, about, when I wanted the kids to hurt themselves.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they're like rubber bands.
Oh, for sure.
Snap back, whether it's emotionally or physically, real quick.
Yeah. And it really, I reflect on this.
It's not minimizing any.
Oh, no. I don't feel that either. But I always, just equated it to the idea that a child won't know if what happened to them was bad unless you continually tell them that what happened to them is bad. So most of these kids in the age range of 4 to 7 that I think about a lot, they knew something happened. They knew people paid attention to what happened. And now, with any luck, they know something happened that they can move on from.
Sure.
And it doesn't stick with them, in the way that you might think it would. So those are the cases that I think about all the time.
Yeah, those are. I'm sure you've seen some doozies because you see stuff in the news every now and again about military, this, military, that. It seems like some of the more violent things tend to happen.
Yeah,
with members of the military.
Yeah,
I mean, not that it doesn't happen outside of that, but just like the ones that you hear about in the news generally are fairly violent.
Well, yeah, and I think generally speaking, people are surprised to hear that, military members could be implicated in that type of activity. It's hard to imagine that military members who are recruited because they want to serve their country and they want to do good things are then involved in criminal activity. But, the thing we have to remember is the military is just a subsegment of society.
Right.
And frankly, the military recruits from a socioeconomic background of kids that just historically and statistically are more prone to and exposed to criminal behavior. And that's not to say that they're destined for it, but no matter who is coming into the military, they're just like every other member of society, and to believe that they all behave in brilliant and outstanding ways is
like all rest of us. We're not predisposed to anything.
Right.
We're probably more a factor of our environment than we are anything else.
100%.
And, who knows, in some way, shape, or form, the military may breed some of that just with, the rigidity of things.
Yep.
Like, oh, you have to do it this way and there's no other way to think about it.
Yep.
That, in a way, in and of itself, kind of breeds a little rebellion.
Yeah.
It's like, well, watch this, Master Chief.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, I know I took us way off track.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
But, can you give us, we were starting to go into the background of True North Legal Groups.
Yeah.
I guess I cut you off in the middle there. So yes, kind of regroup and say, all right, yeah, you were, doing 10 years, doing JAG stuff.
Yep.
And then what the How did you decide you wanted to start your own firm?
Yeah. So I came off active duty. My last day on active duty was December 31st of 2019.
Okay.
And I had traveled a bunch. And so my wife and I decided that we were going to spend some time together. We were going to actually travel together at a bunch of points for my travels. We were going to go do a bunch of great things. And then the pandemic hit, right? And so by virtue of the pandemic, I was kind of forced to make a decision. I was unemployed really at that time, happily. But had to make a decision about where we were going to go and what we were going to do. So I had some colleagues that had a law firm based out of New York City that represents military members that are dealing with disciplinary issues. So I linked up with them. We started working together in partnership there. And then I moved out to Colorado with my family because we had known it when we were on active duty, and we figured that would be a good place to go during this time of incredible uncertainty.
And just to clarify quickly, when you're talking about the firm in New York City, military members or military people with disciplinary issues,
Sure.
are these people that are they out of the military now? Or?
No, these would be mostly active duty, some reserve folks.
Okay.
It's very similar to what I do in some capacity now with True North legal rules, but it would be like a military defendant who wants to hire their own attorney.
I guess the reason I ask is my assumption was that all active duty military matters were handled, let's say, by JAG.
They are. You get, for instance, a free lawyer. It's a military lawyer, much like I was.
Okay.
But just like you could in your local community where you have a public defender, you can also hire somebody to help you in military case. So that's what we did together when I was with this other firm. And I was living in Colorado at the time. And for a couple of years there, we were living in Colorado and enjoyed it in some senses. I mean, it's beautiful there. You get access to the mountains and the skiing, all of that great adventure. But we just really felt a lack of community. You know, people would, in our neighborhood in Colorado, people would come home from work at the end of the day. They'd pull in their garages, close their garage door, and they'd disappear.
Yep.
You wouldn't see them. We lived in this community, in this neighborhood that would have been amazing for kids. Cul-de-sacs and, you know, opportunities to run around and play and nearby parks and, you know, open space. I mean, we had bears running around in our backyard. Not great for kids, that part. But you know, it was just this place like that could have really been something. But nobody was bought into that. Nobody was really showing, you know, an interest in building community. And that was really what I felt like we were missing when we were in the military, is a sense of belonging. And we really wanted that. And so my wife and I came here in summer of 2022 here to Traverse City. And we just kind of did the walk around that you imagine any couple doing on a day trip to Traverse City, right? Walked around the neighborhoods, got a cup of coffee, got, you know, some lunch, and my wife grew up in Battle Creek. We knew about this place. We had visited this place on vacation, but for the first time we started to kind of look at it as maybe this is a different place that we could live and that we could enjoy. And so we started looking at a house. Now, realtor says a house. We bought a house. We were up here by October. I mean, it was like July we visited, and October we were here.
That's pretty quick.
Very quick.
So obviously your walk-around tour was...
Yeah, it was helpful. And if there's anything that you should know about the Traeger family, it's that they make bold moves quickly. So we are not faint of heart. So yeah, we move fast.
So I've got to ask the question. You know, the only other Traeger thing that I know is the grill.
Yeah,
That you?
I wouldn't be in the legal world if it was my grill, Derek.
Yeah, you'd be down in the Caribbean.
100%. I'd be grilled.
Probably have your own island.
I would definitely have an. Yeah,
fair enough.
Yeah. So no,
and Josh Traeger, not the same thing.
If only they could be. I do have a hat.
But if Traeger wants to send stuff through, feel free.
That's right. Both ways. Him and I. We're both up for free giveaways. But yeah, I mean, we moved up here and just fell in love. I mean, we were very aggressive, I would say, as a family about getting out there and meeting people. I mean, we came that first weekend we were here. We walked around our neighborhood, and anywhere we saw like a bike or a scooter or sidewalk chalk or anything like that was a giveaway.
Yep.
We were knocking on that door, meeting families, because my kids just needed that. And I can't say enough positive things about the community that we've found here. This is a very special place. We've quickly realized that. And frankly, that's kind of what inspired me to start thinking about my own business here.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the combination of that feeling of community and the kind of graciousness that people provide every day. I think that's a Midwest thing, but I think it's a uniquely Northern Michigan thing as well. And then, I don't know, you know better than anybody, there's a spirit here of entrepreneurship that doesn't necessarily mean you got to start your own business, but there's a spirit here of you're going to do whatever it takes to figure it out to stay here, that I never knew about this place before we arrived. And so quickly as I was meeting people, it was like, wait a second, you do what? You sell what? You provide what service? Like all of these very unique
Sell tires from China on a,
exactly, on some kind of weird exchange. Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So many things that I was just shocked by people's ingenuity and the ideas they were bringing here and the execution they were providing. And I think it's really all based on, first of all, a deep love for this place and wanting to stay here. And then, just wanting to bootstrap your life together so that you can enjoy this place as much as you can. And so I started getting that itch, which was just like, gosh, if all these people are doing all these cool things, I can do cool things too. And, I always kind of knew that I was destined to do my own thing and be my own boss and create opportunity for myself and for my family. And so decided to start True North Legal Group and haven't looked back.
So it's funny you mentioned the entrepreneurial spirit here at Traverse City. I would say that is on the newer side of things. So we moved here in 86.
Yeah.
Dad was a OG mission.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't technically born here.
Yeah.
So, do I call myself born and raised? Yes. But was I born? No.
Yeah.
Raised? Yes. But it's like that, I would say probably until just pre-COVID era, did that really become, that kind of spirit really start to blossom?
Yeah.
Because, in years past, it was like, okay, you either worked at the hospital or in the school system or for one of the handful of small businesses in town. Now, there's always been a handful, more than a handful of small businesses, but it wasn't like, all right, I'm going to do this job with the idea that I wanted to start this business in 5 years.
Yeah.
5 years.
Yeah.
Where you're seeing a lot more of that now. When saying, all right, I am a physical therapist. I want to own my own clinic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to go learn from, one or two other clinics in town.
Right.
And then do my own thing, in 3, 5, 10 years, whatever that time frame is.
Right.
Same thing with, medicine, same thing with law.
Mm-hmm.
You see it all the time with lawyers up here. It's like, hey, there's 3 or 4 large groups in town.
Sure. Yeah.
And then it seems like every year there's 2 or 3 of them spitting off into their own firm.
Sure.
And it's great. I love the spirit. So, when did True North Legal Group officially become an entity?
Well, we launched our website in January of this year. We became an entity last year, but we didn't start doing business until January 2024.
Okay. So you've, technically, the business itself has been 5 months, let's call it.
Yeah. Generous. Yeah.
Generous 5 months.
Yeah.
We count them dog years.
I like that.
But it's a short-term, I'm going to say, entrepreneurial career, but you've had the spirit for years and years.
Sure.
What would you say have been, in the short time frame you've been on your own, what have been, I guess, your biggest wins or your biggest, everybody measures success differently, right? So what would you think your biggest success has been since launching your own firm?
I think I don't measure it in how many clients we've gathered or, how much revenue we've produced or, the kind of work that we've done. I do have a lot of pride in doing good work, but I think the biggest thing for me early on has been twofold. Number one, to trust my vision for this particular enterprise. And number two, to stay true to the values that I want to deliver from a legal perspective.
All right.
So those are, because the reason I say that, I know those sound like real pie in the sky, big ideas.
No, but I'm going to go into those ideas.
Yeah.
Because, you just, you brought up 2 big things, vision and value.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I guess in as succinct or as detailed as you want, what is the vision for True North Legal Group?
Yeah, so the way I say it is that we want to be a community-centered legal practice. What that really means is that...
In English, please.
Yeah, right. What that really means is that we are obviously in a position to handle individual clients, organizational clients acute legal needs. And we want to do that with their goals first in mind. So we put client first 100%. But everything that I do and think about in terms of business development and helping clients and the work and these types of, events, all of that, I think of in terms of building community. And so I equate it to, if I'm working with a small business, not only do I want to get that small business in the right direction from an entity formation perspective, from a trademark perspective, from a managerial perspective, but the reason I want to do that and the conversations I have with that client are around how they can build successfully for the future so that they can contribute back to the community in which we exist.
Okay.
That's easy, right? The small business thing is easy to kind of understand how that works. But another great example is we do criminal work, right? So I do criminal defense work here in the local community. And you wouldn't think necessarily when you think of criminal defense work that these are kind of community building organizations, right? But I fundamentally believe that all of us are better than our biggest mistakes, right?
In theory, there's good in everybody.
100%. And so what I want to do as we deliver...
Unless you believe social media.
Right. Right.
What it is that it's, everything's bad, the world's on fire.
Sure.
And we should all just, go in the middle of the lake.
Well, that sells. And so maybe this podcast won't get as many follows because I'm not here spinning that. But I fundamentally believe that everybody's better than their biggest mistake. And so from a criminal defense perspective, I want to achieve a solution that puts that client first. They may be accused of something that they didn't do. And in that case, we're going to litigate. We're going to take the case to a jury, and we're going to see that out to its rightful end. 98% of criminal defense work, to be fair, is all pleas, right? So these are plea deals and finding solutions that work for people. But the underlying kind of tenet of that, value-wise, is I want those people then to come out of our time together with a drive and an ability to then become productive members of our society.
And do better.
Yeah. Right. So that's how we deliver legal services, I think, in a different way than other people do.
Okay. So, all right, so you've got vision, you've got values. Any other, I guess, let's call it big success pieces, or if, again, you measure success not in dollars and cents or numbers of clients, but in vision, values, and coming back into as productive members of society.
Yeah.
For clientele. What other, I guess, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, what other vision or value exponents, or how do you expand on that to then, how do you then bring them back to, let's just, you've got somebody who made a mistake.
Yeah.
And you pled it out.
Sure.
What is your role, or how do you get them to then, what resources are available to them either through your firm or through one of your contacts that are able to get them back into being a productive member of society?
Well, it really depends on their particular case, obviously. But, we are, for instance, we've handled, DUI cases in the local community, or we've handled financial crimes in the local community. And so for most of those folks, we are not only kind of achieving a plea deal that makes sense for them or taking their case to trial if it makes sense, but then equipping them with for instance, financial responsibility training.
Okay.
That they might be able to access through Michigan State and the University of Michigan or something somewhere else, free or at low cost, that then is going to set them up to not make the same mistake twice, right? So that's kind of the vision there. And I think really the big approach and the big success, so to speak, has been, there have been opportunities that I've had over the course of the last 4 or 5 months to work with or represent someone that could have been very lucrative and could have helped pay the marketing bill, or could have helped keep the lights on, or could have helped pay the phone bill. And it's really hard, I think, as a young business owner to turn that work away. Sure. Right? Because it's like, that's a check that we can cash. But I felt, first of all, I'm grateful for the support I have with my family to be able to do this, but also to have the fortitude to stick to the belief system that we would place now. Oh, that's the single biggest victory I've had thus far.
Being able to say no. I mean, I'm 17, 18 years in the finance industry, finance and tax. And it's like, you look at the makeup of my client base now.
Yep.
Versus first 3 to 5 years.
Yep.
I mean, there's the old adage, in the finance industry, can you fog a mirror? and it's like, okay, then you can be a client.
Yeah.
But you look at it now and you're like, okay, I have certain ways that I think about things and a certain type of person that I interact with.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
most of my clients end up being friends of mine.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, we have the same personalities. I always say, my middle name is inappropriate and I use fuck as a comma. And that's okay. But those are the type of people, that I get along with.
Yeah.
And it's like 15 years ago, they might not have been that person, say, across the table from me. Now it's predominantly sitting across, and I'm able to say, no, you are not a good fit for this practice. You go there now. And I mean, for you in the first 4 or 5 months to be able to do that is, admirable for one.
Thank you.
And two, very hard to continue.
Oh, it's excruciatingly hard every time.
Yeah.
So if you say it's hard to continue, then I can only imagine. So that's been a big one. And that, I'm reflecting too in my head on, I think at this point in time, and other business owners understand what I mean by this, but you've got to, and I feel like we've done a really good job of doing the things that don't scale.
Sure.
Like you just got to do the things.
Unfortunately, those are the things that make the biggest impact.
Yeah.
The things that scale and repeatable, now somebody's going to come across with some app that is going to make that obsolete.
Yep.
Yeah. Your service obsolete.
Yeah.
So it's like doing the things that nobody else or nobody can do quickly or easily.
Yep.
One, it creates value. Two, it creates a reputation. But like you said, it's not scalable.
Right.
Right. Scalable to a degree of your own time constraints.
Right.
But other than that, it's not like you can be like, hey, we're going to repeat this person 50 times over in the next year. Right. No, you can only take on 10 of those.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yep. Yeah. In a good example, we do a lot of small business work, like I said, and, we try to model that on a subscription basis. So if you're a small business owner, you need legal help, we have a subscription model that provides you a suite of services at a given monthly price. One of the benefits, though, of that, as we advertise it, is that you have free attorney consultations, which attorney consultations is a really fancy way to say you can call me anytime.
Yeah.
And that happens, Derek. It happens. And I love it. I really do. It really makes me feel like I'm a part of that business's growth. But a thing that doesn't scale is, I might get asked by a small business owner, hey, what internet service should I use? Well, that's definitely not a legal.
You only have one option.
Right. Well, I guess it's a little different, right? But what business credit card should I get? I get that question more often than you think.
Capital One Spark.
Right. Okay. There you go. So I'm a Chase guy. Shout out Chase. Get in line with Traeger if you want to send some stuff. But Chase, and so that's a question that you can spend the time to answer and frankly do a little bit of research on. So you're not just saying, hey, the same one that I use, but that's only a 5-minute task or whatever. But that's the kind of stuff that doesn't scale, but that builds you, like you said, that credibility, that know-how, that reputation that you hope one day will allow you to get away from those things.
You're a bona fide member of a team now as opposed to just a transaction.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think those two things have been big victories.
Because I started my career down in, Ann Arbor area.
Yeah.
After college. And Traverse City is much different than your more metropolitan areas, even just in Michigan, right? You've got Ann Arbor, kind of Royal Oak, all the greater Detroit areas, that everybody is very open about money, etc. down there. Up here, it's the complete opposite. It's like it's like layers of an onion. You gotta slowly peel back, and they're not going to talk about it until they trust you.
Mm-hmm.
So, doing the things that other people won't, doing them well, and, do what you say you're going to do by the time you're going to do it, all of a sudden it opens doors in spades. It just takes time.
Yep.
My dad always told me, he's like, all right, you got all your licensures or whatever, you passed your test. It's kind of like going, finishing med school. All right, yeah, you can be a doctor. Now you have to go into your residency or fellowship to figure out how to be.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing. It's like, all right, we've gone through all these things. Now we have to figure out how to help these people with yes, all this experience in trial, but Traverse City community is way different than Denver, way different than, Wake Forest, way different than, New York, et cetera.
Yeah.
You're developing a niche here. I guess that's probably a good segue. What's been the hardest part about launching a business, not only here, but a legal business itself?
Yeah. So
the reason I say that quickly is, lawyers, financial advisors, and accountants in Traverse City are a dime a dozen.
Oh man, you hit one, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So first of all, that was back when after we moved here, I realized that this is where I wanted to go. I started having conversations with folks that were either in the law or adjacent to the law. And a lot of those conversations were about my thought of, hanging a shingle and doing it on my own. And I'll be honest with you, the first half a dozen or so conversations I had, mostly with legal professionals, where was that?
Yeah.
There's a lot of lawyers up here, kid, and are you sure you want to jump into our pool? And it was really discouraging. I'm not one, though, to kind of back down from a fight. And so it was discouraging. But then, I started having different conversations somehow. And luckily, I was just getting in different rooms with different people. And then the feedback started to be, yeah, there's a lot of lawyers in town, but there's only one that's you. Or there's a lot of lawyers in town, but there's
only a few good ones.
Thank you for saying it so I didn't have to. So that was, a road, a bump in the road that luckily we were able to overcome. But you asked about, failures. So first of all, from a business perspective, I would say not quite appreciating the cost of launch.
Yeah. Very true.
And maybe it's because I deep in my soul, I don't like to do anything half-assed, dude. Everything in my life, if you're going to do it, just do it right the first time.
Yep.
And then you never have to revisit it, or you rarely have to revisit it, as opposed to doing it 50% and then having to revisit it. So that meant that I invested a significant amount of money that I was not yet, necessarily planning for in brand building and website building and promotional materials and relationship building and all of the things that, I feel very fortunate that I happen to have been in a financial position to be able to shoulder that. But I now look around, because I think, there is a struggle of a small business owner of not having capital. And, that's how the vast majority of businesses fail is, a lack of access to capital. And they're energized at the beginning and then they lose a lot of steam and it's money coming out. And so I get it. So I think the biggest failure has been, luckily for me, we were in a position financially where I could start it the way I wanted to start it. But if we hadn't been flexible when those numbers started to look different and after month 2 than we thought they would look, I don't know if I'd be here. I think I'd probably be back working for the government again. So, that's probably been the biggest failure. And then I think from a legal perspective, and this is applicable, I think, to any business owner, especially in service industry, but I think I overestimated the applicability of my experience.
Mm-hmm.
So my military experience is a mile deep and an inch wide. Like the military law and military courts martial, it's super niche, right? But I know it like,
you don't need to have a textbook for it.
And the time I spend on it is minimal, and I could run circles around anybody else with regard to military criminal law. And then I started to get involved in local criminal law. And the learning curve is significant. And my wife, love her, obviously, but, she kept on saying to me when we were in that kind of first 2-week stage, where she kept saying, well, when are you going to start doing more study of Michigan process and procedure? I mean, a criminal case is a criminal case no matter where you have it. I understand evidence, I understand cases, things like that. But like, when are you going to start understanding Michigan procedure more? And I'm a Michigan barred attorney, so I have a general background in it. But I kept thinking, well, might as well not get ready until a client shows up, right? But then when a client showed up, it was like, oh boy, we gotta get ready. It's time. So that I would say the failure has just been in taking for granted that it would be the type of experience that would translate. I do think it gives me a very unique approach to practicing law, and perspective. Yeah, for sure. But there's a significant learning curve whenever you start something new. Yep. And I've been, I'm very grateful to the other attorneys in town that were the ones that said, yeah, but there's no other attorney like you. The supportive ones that have now started to take me under their wing and kind of show me around. I mean, I didn't even know where to send emails. I didn't know who to contact. I didn't know who to call. I didn't know anything from a process perspective. Yep. And so I'm very grateful to those folks that have said, that when I asked for help, they said yes. Sure. Instead of what they could have said was, find your own way, kid. Yeah. Because we understand. Exactly. So I think that's probably been the biggest failure. I mean, it's costly and it's a lot of work.
So if you look back on, you did all the shiny objects when you launched the firm.
Oh, yeah.
Promotional material, websites, etc. When you look back on that today, even though it's only been, 4 or 5 months, would you look at that and say that was money well spent at the time?
I would say that the branding and the overall aesthetic that we put out in the world was. And that's because I think the marketplace for professional services has changed dramatically. Yeah, right. So we used to walk around town and you stop by a lawyer's office, right? Or you stop by a financial advisor, or you go to the bank, or whatever it is. That doesn't exist anymore. So I knew that what our storefront was and is the website. Sure. And it is our brand. So I knew that had to be right. And so I just underestimated. And to be honest, part of the increased cost was my own painstaking attention to detail. So like the guys that helped me build my website are fantastic local, marketing company. And they said, hey, here's the price. And they probably expected every other client that they've ever encountered. And what they got was me, which meant that they got, pages long emails of all the edits I wanted them to make to the website as they were building it.
So many lawyer jokes.
Dude.
The length of your stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Like, couldn't this be said in 3 sentences?
No.
Yes.
It can.
Yeah. Right. You just have to explain everything now because otherwise it'll get litigated.
So I know that the team that was putting the website together was just rolling their eyes every time an email from Josh Traeger came across their desk. But yeah, that's just been a growing point. I mean, it's been huge.
How you mentioned kind of other lawyers, other professionals, et cetera, kind of taking you under your wing, showing you procedural ropes, et cetera, being supportive of your endeavors. How have those connections kind of shaped and crafted how you move forward?
Oh, I in tremendously powerful ways. I mean, in ways that those people don't even understand and appreciate. I know that I couldn't be in the place that I am in now, where I finally do feel comfortable no matter what case comes to me, answering questions and giving kind of a sense of where things would go. I wouldn't be there without the folks that have been supportive of me. And so how is it crafted? I think I always knew that I wanted to be the kind of person that gave back. I mean, that's kind of where the whole heart and soul of our law firm lies anyway, is in this community-centered nature of professional service that we can offer. But so I always kind of knew that that's where we would be. it's just so invigorating to look around and know that those people exist out there. Because, I mean, the legal community is probably known among any other profession as just being this cutthroat, mean to each other, unapproachable, difficult. Everything's club. Yeah, everything's a battle kind of thing. And
because you love to argue.
Right. That's the calling card. But so to see others out there that are not only willing to share, but to share like their secrets and like their keys to success has been fantastic. And I can't thank those folks enough.
And I think it goes back to something that we talked about towards the beginning of, there's good in everybody and everybody kind of wants to help and see other people succeed.
Yeah.
You're finding the ones that have, I'm going to say more, I don't want to call anybody near and genuine, but definitely the ones that have genuine,
for sure,
good in themselves to be able to want to help, one, an aspiring entrepreneur, two, a possible competitor.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like, I recognized the same thing early on in my career. There was, I would go out and have lunch with, other financial advisors, other CPAs, other lawyers, etc. And it was about a 50-50 split of being like, yeah, here's, some top of mind thoughts from me about early on in my career. It's been 30 years since then. Some were willing to share. Others would be like, you got to pound the phones. And, and you're like, okay, thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks for putting less than a second of thought into that response.
Right.
So, I did want to go back to, your ability to say no.
Yeah.
Currently, how, as a newer law firm that is, growing and learning how to scale or not scale, how are you able to say no to work, even if it doesn't fit? I guess, how are you able to say this does not fit my values, so I'm going to say no? How are you able to come up with that kind of, Rubik's Cube or whatever equation?
Yeah, so I think it's a couple of things. The first is just an undying belief in self and the ability to succeed. Because if you can't believe in yourself, then you have the doubts as to whether you should turn down those opportunities. Mm-hmm. So that's number one. Number two is the support around you that reinforces that belief. So my wife is number one in that regard in terms of she fundamentally believes that this is succeed too. So she understands when those calls come and they'll turn into clients. And I think the last one is spending the time early in the entrepreneurial process, understanding you're not always going to understand what opportunities are going to come to you, right? So you can't see the future. You don't know what phones are going, how the phones are going to ring.
And if you understand everything, you're blowhard.
Right.
Nobody understands.
Right. Exactly. But I think early in the entrepreneurial process, I spent a significant amount of time thinking about what I wanted to be. And I'll give you the perfect example. So I first came into this, and the tagline I came up with in my head was, world-class trial advocacy finally arrives in Northern Michigan. Right?
Intriguing.
World-class trial advocacy finally arrives in Northern Michigan. And the idea of that was I have all this trial experience, and I'm going to come in and set the world on fire.
Blazing saddles.
Blazing saddles, be the guy, fancy suit, all the kind of stuff.
Boring. I was just kidding.
Yeah, 100%. Like, yeah, got it, New York, get out of here, kind of that, right? And then, but I looked around and I thought to myself, this is a way, this is an entrance into the market. This is a way for me to kind of pitch myself, right? And I was all about it. And I was building branding around into my head and the whole thing. And then I just woke up one day and was like, that ain't you. You're good at what you do. Don't get,
You're not a cocky asshole.
No, and I'm not.
Maybe you are.
Right, no. Well, maybe. We'll see. Depends on the circumstances, I guess. But
give it a couple more months.
Right, yeah, right. Yeah, give it a little longer. Wait to see how revenue looks in 3Q. But I think ultimately, I will compare my resume against anybody, but that was kind of like, okay, let's come at it like that. And just, by the grace, I woke up one morning and said, that's not you and that's not what you want to be. So I think doing the work early, in terms of like, I hate that phrase, doing the work, but like, no kidding, sitting down and writing out what your values are, what you want your business to look like, and how you want your business to show up in the world, and putting that on paper so that when that call comes through and it's a promise or an offer for an opportunity that could really change maybe your immediate circumstances, and you have that little feeling in your gut that it might not fit, well, you have a rubric to go back to that you can use to measure against. And it's scary as hell to say no. But, but I don't know. I just feel like the no's, produce more yeses.
They do, and I'm making an assumption here, but I would assume that saying no keeps you more focused on your paths and kind of your ideal client, your values, et cetera, on what you want the firm to be.
100%.
Okay.
100%. That's exactly what it does. Yeah, absolutely.
So just like you said, you have a rubric, not necessarily a defined on paper rubric, but you have a rubric of what is important.
Yep.
The ones that you take on, fit it. The ones that you don't, reinforce why you're not. Reinforce that rubric of how it works.
Yeah.
So I'm impressed.
Yeah, and well, thank you. And I think in that context too, and in the context of what we talked about earlier, seeking out others that can assist you along the way, I think it's imperative that you have a group of people that you trust, and it cannot just be your spouse. It can't, because
It's either going to be a yes woman or yes man or woman, or a no man or woman with your spouse.
Right. Or it's going to create a tension in your marriage that you do not need. Mm-hmm. You bring a business tension into a complicated marital relationship, and it only makes matters more complicated.
Marriage is a riot.
Well, that's a different podcast. That's a different podcast. But anyway, I think in that context, you have to have people that you can talk to, preferably that aren't in it with you, right? Yeah. That can kind of see an outside perspective. And then you have to be willing to ask for help. Mm-hmm. So the people that have offered me their time now to help, me get used to policies and procedures and processes and all that, they weren't like knocking on my door when I started. You know what I mean? Like if I hung out my website January 5th, they weren't showing up January 6th going, hey, Josh, welcome to the community. How can we help?
Right.
But as soon as I asked, they were willing to. And that takes a little bit of pride swallowing too.
Sure.
So, having that core, that group of people, and then swallowing your pride enough to say, I don't know what I don't know. Can somebody help me out in that regard? It just multiplies your capability.
Mm-hmm. So I guess that's probably a good segue of what advice would you give aspiring entrepreneurs in the greater, I guess it can be national, but greater Grand Traverse area in general where we live and work? You kind of you gave a couple of examples just now. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah.
And be able to swallow your pride. But what would you say you think is important when you're starting, whether you're launching a firm with an existing, or I guess a business with an existing revenue model, or starting from scratch?
Yeah. So I would start with, don't be afraid to ask, and don't be afraid to accept and publicize that you don't know. Nobody, I don't know how and when I learned this lesson, but there's so much truth to the idea that there are no adults. Okay.
No. Man children or women children.
All of us are just trying to figure it out. Nobody in this life, and I don't care from the richest to the poorest, from the most successful to the least, from the biggest athlete to the least capable, nobody has it all figured out. So I have dispelled in my head the belief that because someone else has something different or better or bigger than I do, then they must be inaccessible to me. And so I would encourage others out there to believe that too, because none of us has it all figured out. I'm going to walk out of here with 1,000 things to do, and 999 of them I don't know how to figure out. Right. And so that's life. And so to be able to accept that and just ask for help is I think huge. I think you have to have people around you in an entrepreneurial journey that are your cheerleaders and are there to help you along the way, because there are days when it's very stressful and hard and lonely and scary. And you're looking at your business account is dropping. You're looking at your personal accounts are dropping. You're looking at your 2 kids in the corner who you just want to deliver the world to. And you're confident in the direction that you're going, but it's like you just want the future to be now. Even though you don't, like deep down in your core, you don't want to be 3 to 5 years down the road. But if you could just be 3 to 5 years down the road for like 10 minutes and look around and be like, okay, everything's okay here, right? Everything's okay. Yeah, the lights are still on. Oh, there's coffee still brewing. Okay. Oh, is that someone that I've employed out there? You know, if you could just get a glimpse of 3 to 5 years down the road and then go back, it would be a tremendous benefit. But so there's the reason I say that is because those moments of loneliness and scariness and the I don't knows, those moments are constant. And you need somebody that you can call. I called you on one. You need somebody that you can call to just help you through that momentary period of time. And if you surround yourself with people that you want to be like, you're going to be like them.
And it's funny, you mentioned that call you made to me, and it was, you were already right.
Yeah.
The thought process was already right. You just needed somebody else to take, 5, 10, 15 minutes of their time and just say, yep, that's exactly correct. Or no, here's what not even that you're not correct, just think about it differently.
Yep.
And, you happened to, we had the same thought process there. You were like, hey, what do you do about this, this, and this? And it was like, here's what I'd start with. If that doesn't work, goes to this.
Yep.
And you're like, that's exactly how I had it written down.
And you know what it did for me there? 2 things. Number one, it helped me answer that immediate thing that had been tugging on my shirt for days. The answer to that question was answered. Even though you're right, I had a good vector. You made sure the vector was, perfectly straight. That was number one. And number 2, the next time something like that came to me and I started to doubt whether I had it right, I didn't feel as much of a need to pick up the phone and call somebody else, because the advice you gave me on question number 1 made me feel more confident about my answer on question number 2. Yep. And so that works both ways, right? And so if you're out there and you're an entrepreneur and you've succeeded, right, whatever that means to you, I believe that a rising tide lifts all boats. And so I think it's incumbent upon you to reach back. And I appreciate you for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those, my dad always told me, repetition is the key to learning. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, sometimes you have to, even though you might be repeating it yourself, thinking it's correct, you need that validation from some external source.
Yeah.
That is, whether it's friend, confidant, attorney, accountant, financial, somebody in a professional setting to either give you a confidence boost pat on the back, or not a beat you down, you're wrong type of thing, just more of a, okay, I see where your head's at.
Yeah.
But you got to shift this frame of thought just a little bit. And it's constructive criticism, I guess is probably the buzzword. Mm-hmm. Because I think most everybody up here wants everybody else to succeed. There are, the small handful, and they generally tend to be older, different time period, that looks at everybody as their competitor, makes it about them.
Well, I know you're
I'm recalling something from 10, 15 years ago, and you're just like, wait a minute, this isn't about you or me. It's about, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Mm-hmm. Like, that's who we're trying to do the work for.
Yeah.
It's like, why are you trying to make this about you or me? That serves nobody any good. That does nobody any good.
No.
So it's...
No. And that's fundamentally rooted in fear.
Correct.
That's what it comes down to. It's that mentality is fundamentally rooted in the fear that if you don't win, you'll lose it all. And that things don't work that way.
It's not. I mean, there's, what do they say? There is no I in team.
Yeah, right.
hope that there isn't me.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But I completely believe in that approach.
Yeah.
Is that there's no one person that can know everything. There's way too many variables in finance, law, insurance, etc., for any one person to even completely grasp, let alone an expert in.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, even in my financial practice, right, I deal with estate planning attorneys, business attorneys, trial attorneys, all sorts of different types of legal.
Yeah.
That's just on legal spectrum.
Yep.
When we're talking accounting, or tax, it's like, okay, there are forensic people that I've dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
There are, forward-looking, backward, compliance stuff. There is, cannabis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now you're getting these specialized accounting firms that's like, hey, we only deal with, restaurants from, 1 to 2 million in revenue, and you have to be doing American food.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, I didn't know there was a difference in, cogs of
Right. Yeah.
different food,
Yeah.
restaurant styles.
Yeah. We only do waffle fries.
Right.
Yeah.
Only do waffle fries and chicken and a biscuit.
That's right.
So I get it. It's fine.
Yeah.
But all right. Well, we usually end every episode by giving the guest, you in this case, a few minutes to leave a message to our listeners, whether it's, you want to promote True North Legal Group, tell people how to get in touch with you, expound on a story or personal experience, just something a little bit extra of what Josh has to offer. So it's your time to have the floor, and whether it's offer advice, promote True North, however you want to do it, this is for you.
Well, I appreciate that very much. So True North Legal Group, you can get online, www.truenorthlegalgroup.com. It's the best way to get a hold of us if you have a small business, nonprofit, criminal issue that we can help you out with. That's where you can find us. But I appreciate the time to say a couple things. So I told you earlier that one of the motivators for us to move here and one of the motivators for us to get out of the military was this feeling of a lack of community and a lack of belonging. And I think today our society is driving further and further in the direction of loneliness, and it is a shockingly scary proposition to me. As a father, it is, because I see how kids are growing up and their dependence on devices and the isolation that drives. I see it, because I do help military veterans as well from a legal perspective, and how that community is being increasingly isolated and lonely. And frankly, that idea spreads across our society. So like wildfire. And it's shocking. The statistics are wild in terms of loneliness. And our Surgeon General wrote a great book on it. I think it's well worth everyone reading. But I think the takeaway that I would give, the reason that I started the law firm and have the values that we have is, again, to be community-centered and to build community here in Northern Michigan. I think we have something very special here that, if we continue to approach it with intention, is going to be really a leader as a community for this country and for the world. I truly in my heart believe that, and we want to play a role in that as a legal practice. But I think, at the micro level, every person should feel the importance of reaching out to another person and being a good neighbor, being a good friend, being a good point of contact, whether that's just texting a friend to see how they're doing that day, whether it's knocking on your neighbor's door and saying hello and, just having conversation, or whether it's, no kidding, something more involved of like sitting down for coffee or going to lunch or having somebody to your home. Any of those things, I think, is going to do the important work of helping us work through all of this loneliness that we're experiencing in our society.
So, moral of the story, don't be a dick.
Yeah, that's Derek's take. There it is. Derek's tagline.
So, and if you can hear this without fail, pretty much every time I try to record a podcast in the office, somebody comes by with the lawnmower.
Hey,
it's a big tractor. So I don't know if you can hear it in the background. I don't know. If you can, I'm sorry. Hopefully we can edit it out.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. The guy's got to do his job, man.
He's got to do his job.
And especially on a Friday afternoon, it's so beautiful here in Northern Michigan. He's trying to get that.
It is.
That lawn. He's literally right outside.
He is right outside the door.
He might be coming through the door.
He's and it's a funny thing. He is actually next to him. Well, that's not the guy that cuts our grass.
You've also got like this wide
Spot of grass out there. A 6th Street drug. That's the Munson guy cutting, 6th Street drugs grass.
Yeah.
It takes him about 30 seconds.
giant machine.
And it just so happens to be right. Couldn't have done it any other time during the course of the day. But
That's a cue.
yeah, right. That's the cue. It's time to go. All right. Well, as you know, my name is Derek Dall'Olmo. I'm the owner of both Tremonti Financial Consultants and Tremonti Tax Solutions, together referred to as Tremonti. Tremonti bridges the gap between financial advisors and accountants by serving as CFO to our clients. We specifically love to work with business owners to develop a proactive tax strategy that maximizes after-tax profits. It's our job to help you earn more, be more efficient, grow faster, and pay as little in taxes as legally possible. Da-da-da. If this idea piques your interest, please go to TremontiTax.com and click on the Schedule Now button to book a 15-minute chat with me. Whether we end up working together or not, I'd love to hear from you. Well, as said, Josh, it was really good talking to you today.
Awesome, brother. Thanks so much for having me.
For those of you listening, if you enjoyed today's episodes and had a few helpful takeaways, we would love for you to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and share this episode with other business-minded friends. This has been another episode of the Traversing Entrepreneurship Podcast. We had fun today, and I hope you did too. Thanks again, Josh, for being here, and thank you for tuning in and listening.
Sweet, brother. That was awesome.
Thanks for that. That was good.
That was fun.
This podcast is presented by Tremonti Financial Consultants, LLC. The firm is registered as an investment advisor and only transacts business in states where it is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor does not constitute an endorsement of the firm by securities regulators, nor does it indicate that the advisor has attained a particular level of skill or ability. The information presented is believed to be current. It should not be viewed as personalized investment advice. All expressions of opinion reflect the judgment of the presenter on the date of the podcast and are subject to change. You should consult with a professional advisor before implementing any of the strategies discussed. Content should not be viewed as an offer to buy or sell any of the securities mentioned or as legal or tax advice. Always consult an attorney or tax professional regarding your specific legal or tax situation. Different types of investments involve higher and lower levels of risk. There is no guarantee that a specific investment or strategy will be suitable or profitable for an investor's portfolio. There are no assurances that a portfolio will match or exceed any particular benchmark. All investment strategies can result in profit or loss.